I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 92 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Natural Resources, pursuant to the order of reference of Tuesday, October 17, 2023, and the adopted motion of Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. The committee is resuming consideration of Bill C-49, an act to amend the Canada, Newfoundland, and Labrador Atlantic Accord Implementation Act and the Canada-Nova Scotia Offshore Petroleum Resources Accord Implementation Act, and to make consequential amendments to other acts. Since today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of members and witnesses. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. Although the room is equipped with a powerful audio system, feedback events can occur. These can be extremely harmful to interpreters and cause serious injuries. The most common cause of sound feedback is an earpiece worn too close to the microphone. We therefore ask all participants to exercise a high degree of caution when handling the earpieces, especially when your microphone or your neighbor's microphone is turned on. In order to prevent incidents and safeguard the hearing health of interpreters, I invite participants to ensure that they speak into the microphone into which their headset is plugged in, and to avoid manipulating the earbuds by placing them on the table away from the microphone when they are not in use. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Additionally, screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. In accordance with our routine motion, I am informing the committee that all remote participants have completed the required connection tests in advance of the meeting, and I believe one of the witnesses, Miss McNeil, is having some technical issues, which I hope will get resolved as we proceed with the meeting with our technology ambassadors. With us today to answer your questions are from the Department of Justice, Jean-Nicolas Bastros, counsel. Also, Jean-Francois Roman, legal counsel. From the Department of Natural Resources, Abigail Lixfeld, Senior Director, Renewable and Electrical Energy Division, Energy Systems Sector. Annette Tobin, Director, Offshore Management Division, Fuel Sector, by video conference. Lauren Knowles, Deputy Director. Cheryl McNeil, Deputy Director, by video conference. And Daniel Morin, Senior Legislative and Policy Advisor, Renewable and Electrical Energy Division, as well as the legislative clerks from the House of Commons, Dancela Boilly and Emily Thivierge. But today we are resuming the clause-by-clause consideration of Bill C-49 at Clause 221. At the last meeting, the committee agreed by unanimous consent to allow Mr. Bruson to move amendment the new G25, which starts on page 75 of the package. So I will go to there. Mr. Bruson.
Thank you. So this motion is similar to others that I have brought in respect of a different coming into force date relating to the Impact Assessment Act. So I'm just going to be supporting it and asking for my colleagues to support it as well.
Okay, Mr. Bruson, thank you for moving new G25. And now, yes, Mr. Patzer.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, obviously, we all supported her having the ability to move that amendment again, which is fine. Just because we are moving a date for in regards to the Impact Assessment Act, I'm wondering if, we've had a few days. I'm just wondering if either the parliamentary secretary or maybe the officials have that maybe they know the date when the Impact Assessment Act, maybe they know it today. And I'm just wondering if I'd like to give them the opportunity. If anybody knows when the date is that this Impact Assessment Act will be fixed and will be compliant with Canadian law, then that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patzer. Is there anybody who would like to answer that? Mr. Patzer's question. Mr. Patzer, did you have it addressed to somebody specifically? So, okay, Mr. Bruson, I'll start with you, and then we can proceed onwards.
We anticipate that it will be happening shortly, but on the other hand, for the purposes of writing legislation, there's not going to be a fixed date added into this. It's that it would be left to the governor and council as a coming into force date for this section. The same as the other ones that we have put in place.
Thank you, Mr. Bruson. Do we have any further debate? Just looking on screen for my colleagues? No? Okay. Well, let's proceed to the vote. Can we call the roll, please?
Mr. Aldag,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Kotrakis,
Yes.
Mme. Lapointe,
Oui.
Mr. Sorbara,
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Mr. Simard,
No.
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay.
New G25 carries. Shall clause 221 carry as amended? Please call the roll.
Mr. Aldag,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Kotrakis,
Yes.
Mme. Lapointe,
Oui.
Mr. Sorbara,
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen, yes. Mr. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Mr. Simard,
No.
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay.
Clause 221 carries as amended. Okay, the committee will remember that on March 21st, 2024, we agreed to stand clause 147. We are now ready to go back to clause 147. When the committee agreed to stand the clause, we were debating amendment CPC 12 on page 57 of the package, which was amended by a sub-amendment that was adopted. The text of the amendment, CPC 12, as amended by the sub-amendment reads as follows. That bill, C49, in clause 147, be amended by adding after line 27 on page 107 the following. During the submerged land license issue process, importance shall be given to the consideration of effects on fishing activities. So before we vote on the amendment CPC 12 as amended, do members wish to further debate the amendment or propose another sub-amendment? Go to you, Mr. Patzer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I do appreciate the committee allowing us to have the time to go back to do this one again. Try to keep the spirit of the language that Ms. DeBruson proposed in the amendment that the committee adopted. So I hope that you guys won't. Hope you'll see that is in there. So. The amendment, or I don't know if you call it a sub-amendment or what, but yeah, the sub-amendment I'm proposing, I guess, then would be that motion CPC 12 as amended, proposing to amend clause 147 of Bill C49 by adding paragraph C after line 27 on page 107, be amended by replacing the consideration of effects on fishing activities with the following. Considering the effects of the proposed work or activity on fishing activities, and to understanding and maintaining the environmental characteristics of the offshore area that support that industry. Now, we had some witness testimony that did speak to the characteristics and the of the ocean floor. That was Dr. Kevin Stokesbury, who's a PhD in marine ecology. in regards to the development of wind, he did have this to say, that this will change the environment, the seafloor makeup, the current structure, the acoustics both during construction and operation, and the electromagnetic field. All these will impact the associated flora and fauna of the areas. This will happen on the scales of the individual turbine, which is centimeters to kilometers, the wind farm fields from tens to hundreds of kilometers, and the entire eastern seaboard. It will affect the fisheries. He said also that there is no overall framework to coordinate the different scientific research or push for broader ecosystem understanding. I suggest that a framework that categorizes information about the ecology, economics, and social and institutional effects of each of these two industries, the appropriate spatial and temporal scales, is key to reducing conflict and improving cooperation. So, of course, the two industries he's talking about are obviously fishing and then the new wind power industry that is seeking to be developed with the passing of this bill. So there was also some other concerns that were raised by FFAW around some of the proposals to weaken some of the wording. So they were just seeking that at the federal level here, that we would get some adequate language in here to protect and help the fisheries. One of her quotes, the comment that she had made was that where feasible, fishing activities will be able to continue to take place in areas that also have offshore energy activity was a claim that this would happen. She's saying that is irresponsible, ill-informed, have been made without consultation to our membership. So she was just concerned about some of the impacts that it would have as well. So I think it was another type of support for an amendment that would provide a little bit more certainty to not just fishing activity, but to the environment and the ecosystem that goes along with the development of offshore wind as well. So those are some of the witness testimonies that I had, and yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Patzer. Now we'll go to Ms. DeBrusen.
Given that we've just received it, I would be asking if we could suspend to be able to review it.
I think that's fair, so we will suspend for a few minutes so colleagues have an opportunity to review the sub-amendment. And I just want to let everybody online know that you should have received an email with the sub-amendment as well. So we will suspend for a few minutes to give you time to review it. Thank you. We're suspended. We are back. I just want to make sure that the members online did have an opportunity, enough time, Monsieur Samar, Mr. Angus, to review. Yes, I see thumbs up. Mr. Falk as well. Good. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Mr. Bruson, I'll go back to you.
Just thank you for giving us some time to look at it. And my question, I guess, is for the officials, because similar wording was floated and discussed the last time we were considering the amendments and sub-amendments. And I'm wondering if, since that time that we had these conversations about this additional type of wording, have you had a chance to touch base with the provinces about how they feel about this type of wording? Because it is similar to what had been previously discussed, and what was their opinion about it?
Thank you very much for the question, and I apologize I can't be in the room with you today. We did discuss the previous discussion, sorry, with the provinces after the meetings on March 21st, and we did reflect further on the testimony that was provided during the hearings, and both the provinces as well as Natural Resources Canada recognize that the principles section and C49 could be further strengthened to ensure that potential effects on fishing activities are considered during the submerged land license issuance process. But we feel that the language that was adopted by the committee in that sub-amendment is sufficient, and the provinces were not supportive of making further amendments. They did provide a number of supporting points as to why they felt concerned about making additional changes, including to maintain environmental characteristics of the offshore industry, in part because of sort of the role and the purpose of the regulator, which is of course to ensure the responsible development of offshore energy projects, and some additional considerations that they raise, that the term environmental characteristics is not well understood. It doesn't have a common definition or accepted meaning in common law, and we were not able to find any other federal legislation that used this terminology. And there were a number of concerns raised on the part of both governments and the provinces about establishing such a broad and open-ended requirement that doesn't have established tools or guidance to support the regulator in carrying out that duty. Ambiguity like that does often increase risks of challenge, creates a great degree of uncertainty for both the regulators and for industry. And when we're looking to develop a new industry with offshore renewables, it is quite challenging. That said, government does recognize the importance of the fishing sector, and of course the importance of the environment. And we do feel that the provisions that are already set out in both Part 2 and particularly Part 3 of the Accord Acts and in Bill C49, which is all about regulation of specific projects, is the appropriate place to assess and consider the potential impacts on fish. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Bruson.
Thank you. If I can follow up to that then, because we do have two letters from the ministers, Minister of Industry, Energy and Technology, Andrew Parsons from Newfoundland and Labrador, and a letter from Minister Tory Rushton from Natural Resources and Renewables from Nova Scotia. Both those letters refer to joint management. And I'm just wondering if, in light of the fact that the provinces have said that they do not support having this type of wording added into the bills, am I correct in saying that that would go against the principles of joint management?
Thank you for the question. Yes, in our view, and in particular the view of the provinces, to include any language in C49 that has not been agreed to by both levels of government goes against the spirit of joint management, which is really to do everything together and to set aside, what would ordinarily be unilateral decision making in favor of common decisions. all of the clauses and all of the provisions that that are in C49 were agreed to by the provinces. And once the federal version of the bill is complete, the provinces would need to mirror the same legislation in their own legislatures, and it would be quite problematic and I believe unprecedented for the federal statute to include provisions that are not replicated in the provincial bill and could create quite a degree of administrative uncertainty, where basically we would be giving the regulators competing instructions and putting them in a rather untenable place.
Thank you. In light of those answers, I'll be opposing this sub-amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Bruson. I'm going to go to Mr. Patzer. Mr. Patzer, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, I guess I just wanted to just make a quick extra plead that I guess when the provinces look at this, if they propose amendments, then does that mean that they are going to have to consult with you guys, or are they going to have to consult with this committee as well, seeing that it's supposed to be joint management? Because as I understand it, we're doing this here, but then the province is going to have to go through it as well too. Or what's the process there? I'm just curious because if they get it and then start amending things on their end, what does that do to the process of what we've done here today?
I might defer to my colleagues from Justice or other NRCan colleagues if they have a perspective on what would happen if the province has moved something that does not appear in the federal legislation.
I can answer that question, yeah. So the typical process is, thank you for the question. The typical process is that the federal legislature would move first, and then the province would mirror exactly what's in the federal legislature. Should there be divergences in the provincial process, there would be the same administrative issues that were mentioned by my colleague, by my director, Abigail. And so the process has been for the federal process, legislative process to go first. Provinces mirror exactly, typically word for word, or some minor drafting style changes. They mirror the same intent as what the federal legislation says, and then the boards implement that based on both pieces of legislation.
Okay. Yeah, I think. Yeah. Okay. No, given what's the situation on the ground in the Maritimes around some of the fishing issues, yeah, I think it's important that we just make sure we do everything as properly as we possibly can. So, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, no further comments, I guess. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. Dreeshen.
Thank you. And I guess perhaps similar, but maybe taken from a different perspective. And for the legal folks, I think this would probably be where my question is. If the provinces find that there are some severe impediments to the structures that are in their waters, and they find that they need to come up with some sort of legislation for the environmental integrity of the seafloor and so on, how is that addressed? Is it something that they would then appeal to the federal government so that they could look at changing it? Because it's not that the question isn't important as to how we're going to deal with it. We're simply talking about how we're going to manage the legislation that we have in front of the provinces and in front of us right now. So I'm interested in the ways in which, if this is a problem, if they find that there are problems, how do they talk with the federal government, and what type of a process would be required to amend the legislation or find some way through regulation that that both parties could be satisfied that the actual environmental concerns are taken care of?
Thank you for the question. I don't mind providing a response there. Joint management gives us a really strong foundation to work with the provinces on finding common solutions as we move forward with implementing and regulating projects. And the Accord Acts, which have been in place for decades, have a fair degree of flexibility, both within the instructions that are provided to the regulator to respond to the specifics of each project, as well as the broad regulation-making powers. If there were an issue that arose that the provinces or the federal government felt were not adequately addressed in the Accord Acts, obviously, and both governments felt that legislative change was required, then we would always have the opportunity to go back and make changes. That said, both levels of government and both of the provincial governments do feel that that C49, as it is drafted, and with the further strengthening of the sub-amendment that had been discussed at the previous meeting, does provide the flexibility and the tools that are necessary to be able to manage both our understanding of the environment and of potential impacts on the fishing sector, and to be able to introduce mitigation measures and other tools that are necessary to promote cooperation and coexistence and to manage potential effects. We also recognize as governments that there are a number of things that need to happen that are outside of legislation, that are within the responsibility of government. And Mr. Patzer referenced some of the testimony, and some of it had been reflected in the interim report of the regional assessment committees around the importance of good research, of good data, of science, of working collectively with different stakeholders to make sure that we have a common understanding about how the fishing industry is changing as a result of climate change, how we need to be responding as technology evolves. And so we do feel that there are opportunities and there are mechanisms, and the strength of the cooperation that we have with the provinces through joint management gives us a really strong foundation to work from going forward. Thank you.
Okay, if I could, Mr. Chair, just so I guess part of my and I respect what you're saying, that you're looking at this from a climate change management process, but I think what the fishers are talking about is the structures and how the fishing industry is going to be affected. Not the other is perhaps from a different position. So I guess my question and goes back to, if there has to be changes, will they be done via regulations, regulatory changes that both the federal and the provincial governments would agree to, or would it have to come back to amendments to this legislation in order to rectify any potential problems that would exist?
Thank you for the question. We do feel that there are adequate tools within C49 and within the regulation-making powers to be able to address expected cooperation, coexistence, and mitigation of effects related to projects, and that further changes to the legislation or to introduce new regulation-making powers are not required at this time. In the future, should there be new technologies that have different impacts, or the landscape changes, and governments feel that the Accord Acts do not provide the strength that they need, then governments absolutely have the discretion to make further changes to ensure that the regime is sound.
Thank you.
Do we have any further debate? I'm just looking around the table on screen. Okay. Sub-amendment to CPC 12. Can we call the roll, please?
Mr. Aldag.
No.
Mr. Bruson.
No.
Ms. Petrakis.
No.
Madame Lapointe,
No.
Mr. Sorbara,
Okay, we're gonna say yes.
Mr. Dreeshen,
Yes.
Mr. Falk, Yes. Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Mr. Simard,
No.
Mr. Angus,
No.
4 yeas, 7 nays.
Sub-amendment to CPC 12 fails. Now going back to CPC 12 as amended. Shall CPC 12 as amended carry? Please call the roll.
Mr. Aldag,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Katrakis, Madame Lapointe,
Oui.
Mr. Sorbara,
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Mr. Simard,
Oui.
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
11 yeas, no nays.
CPC 12 as amended carries. Shall clause 147 carry as amended? Please call the roll.
Mr. Aldag,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Katrakis,
Oui.
Madame Lapointe,
Oui.
Mr. Sorbara,
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Mr. Simard,
No.
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay.
Clause 147 carries as amended. Moving on to clause 38, the committee will remember on March 21st, 2024, we agreed to consider and stand clause 38. We are now ready to go back to clause 38, which is now reopened for debate. I would like to remind all members that clause 38 was previously adopted with the following amendments. G1 on page 19 of the package and CPC 7 on page 21 of the package. There are two new amendments that were submitted in relation to clause 38. The amendment G 1.1 can be found on page 21.1 of the package and CPC 7.1 on page 21.2. Please note that if G 1.1 is adopted, CPC 7.1 cannot be moved since lines of paragraph C cannot be amended twice. Is there a member who would like to move G 1.1? Mr. Bruson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, coming out of the conversation that we've just had, this allows for consistency between both the Newfoundland and Labrador and Nova Scotia bills. And I would propose that we support this amendment.
Do we have any further debate? Okay, please call the roll.
Mr. Aldag,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Katrakis,
Oui.
Madame Lapointe,
Oui.
Mr. Sorbara,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dreeshen,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Mr. Simard,
Oui. Oui.
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
11 yeas, no nays.
G 1.1 carries as amended. Nope, sorry, just carries. G 1.1 carries. We'll now move to clause 38. Shall clause 38 carry as amended?
Yes.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Aldag,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Katrakis,
Oui.
Madame Lapointe,
Oui.
Mr. Sorbara,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dreeshen,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Mr. Simard,
No.
Mr. Angus.
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay.
Clause 38 carries as amended. Shall the title carry? Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldig,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Mr. Treffus,
Oui.
Madame Lapointe,
Oui.
Mr. Sorbara,
We.
Mr. Dreesen,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
Yeah.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yeah.
Mr. Simard,
Oui.
Mr. Angus.
Yes.
11 yeas, no nays.
The title carries. Shall the bill as amended carry? Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldig,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Katrakis,
Oui.
Madame Lapointe,
Oui.
Mr. Sorbara,
Yes.
Mr. Dreesen,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Mr. Simard,
No.
Mr. Angus.
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay.
The bill carries as amended. Shall the chair report the bill as amended to the House? Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldig,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Katrakis,
Oui.
Madame Lapointe,
Oui.
Mr. Sorbara,
Yes.
Mr. Dreesen,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Mr. Simard,
Oui.
Mr. Angus.
Yes.
11 yeas, no nays.
That carries. Shall the committee order a reprint of the bill as amended for the use of the House at report stage? Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldig,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Madame Katrakis,
Yes.
Madame Lapointe,
Oui.
Mr. Sorbara,
Yes.
Mr. Dreesen,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Yes.
Too many
Mr.
mics on
Patzer.
around them. Yes.
Mr. Simard,
Oui.
Mr. Angus.
Yes.
11 yeas, no nays.
That carries. Okay, well, Mr. Bruson,
I will not cut you off. Why don't you finish what you were going to say, and then I.
no, you go ahead. I had, before we conclude everything, I had 2 points to address to committee members.
Go ahead.
So I can do that just so committee is aware. Since we are finished the bill, we next Monday we would like to commence on the report, the draft report that was sent to everybody on Canada's clean energy plans, as we do have a meeting scheduled for Monday, and so I'm hoping everybody has got a copy of the bill and we'll have time to review the bill. That will be our plan for next Monday. I also would like to advise the committee that we need to set a witness deadline for our next study on Canada's electricity grid, which proposed dates could be next Friday, April 19th, 4 p.m., or April the 22nd, which would be the following Monday. That's to provide witnesses so we can create the panels and have a really good study moving forward. So I just want, okay, we'll go to you, Mr. Patzer, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Bruson.
Yeah, I would like the 22nd. I think that would be good, just because it is a sitting week next week. We do have lots that will be going on, just to give us a little extra time to make sure that we can get a response from witnesses. Well, obviously, we got to reach out to them first as well if we haven't already, but it just gives us a little bit of extra room there, just in case, we never know what's going to happen in upstairs. So let's just give ourselves a little bit of extra flexibility over a weekend and going into that break week, that constituency week.
Thank you, Mr. Patzer. Mr. Bruson, I do want to go to you. I can go to you, but I have Mr. Angus as well. So I know if is it relating to this? Would you like to comment on this specifically?
I was actually just going to ask if we could release our witnesses so that we can have this. I don't believe that they need to be sitting here through this conversation.
Yes, I can do that, and then I'll go. I'd just like to thank our witnesses for participating on Bill C-49 and working with us for over the last, I'd say, few months and doing a great job. So thank you so much. You are released from today's meeting. Thank you. And I would now like to go to Mr. Angus. Mr. Angus, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the excellent work of getting us to the finish line on this huge bill. So that's, I think, a real success. Like Mr. Patzer, I would like to have that extra time for the witnesses so that we do this right. And then the one thing I wanted to follow up on, there were so many so many motions brought forward by the Conservatives. I can't keep track of them all, but I do remember one that was about bringing the minister to come and testify before us. And I think it's always good to have the minister. So if we're in a spot where we're waiting to get witnesses and we're about to move to this new study, I would like to have the minister come and I think it was they wanted to do on the supplementals, which we probably missed, but it's always good to have them come anyways and talk about what the government's doing with our money.
Okay, go ahead, Julie.
I just
Sorry, Mr.
would,
Wilson.
sorry, thank you. I would just ask that we need to make sure of his availability before confirming a date. So I would ask.
So thank you, colleagues. I'll go to Mr. McGuire and then I'll wrap up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, before we wrap up, I'd like to put a motion out that was provided with the notice of which has already been made, and that is given that the Liberal Newfoundland and Labrador Premier has called on the federal government to spike its 23% carbon tax hike in a letter to the Prime Minister, saying, quote, I am now asking Ottawa to pause its planned increase to the carbon tax set on for April 1st, as the high cost of living is enough of a burden on families, end quote. And B, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the Prime Minister's carbon tax will cost Newfoundland and Labrador families over $1,300 per year now that the carbon tax is quadrupled, while nearly 1/3 of Newfoundland and Labrador currently lives in energy poverty. The committee report to the House that it calls on the Liberal government to immediately withdraw the 23% carbon tax increase that it imposed on Canadians on April 1st, 2024. And Mr. Chair, I think it's an important issue to bring forward at this time. I commend Ms. Stubbs for putting a notice of motion of this motion on the books here last week. And, you know, like many Canadian families, residents in Newfoundland and Labrador are struggling to make ends meet, and everything is more expensive. Indeed, instead of delivering relief, the Prime Minister has hiked the carbon tax by 23% on April 1st. And now that the Liberal Premiers of Newfoundland and Labrador have asked the Prime Minister to pause the carbon tax increase because of the cost of living challenges are already burdening these families. Gas prices are high, the highest in the country. In Newfoundland, food bank usage and visits have skyrocketed across their province, as I know this a similar issue in the home province that I'm in Manitoba. People are having to choose between filling up their cars, heating their homes, and feeding their families and putting food on the table, Mr. Speaker. And even to the recognition of some of the members across the way's own counterparts. You know, last year, I think it was in October, that the Newfoundland and Labrador Liberal MP, Mr. McDonald from Avalon, admitted that the carbon tax is hurting his constituents, saying, and I quote, putting a big burden on people who are now struggling with an affordability crisis, end quote. I know Mr. McDonald personally. I think that's a pretty strong statement for him to make, and I would certainly agree with it, because it's happening not just in Newfoundland but across Canada. So despite that reality, though, he turned around and voted on the tax to keep that tax on Newfoundlanders and save the Prime Minister and his communities paying the price. I think it's important, Mr. Speaker, that, you know, increasing the carbon tax has real-world consequences on real people. So it should come as no surprise that 70% of Canadians and 70% of the province's premiers have opposed the April 1st carbon tax increase that that the Prime Minister has forced through his Environment Minister on all of the people of Canada. And even still, with that 70% reality, the Prime Minister pressed on, and now he's refusing rather to meet the premiers in Newfoundland and Labrador, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Ontario, Alberta, Saskatchewan, who wrote to him asking to discuss alternatives to his punishing carbon tax. Now, that's why the House passed a Conservative motion calling on the Prime Minister to convene an emergency televised carbon tax meeting with all of Canada's 14 First Ministers within 5 weeks, Mr. Chair. And I think that's the least that we could do to try and come to some solutions to attack the affordability crisis that's hitting families across the country today, but particularly here in Newfoundland. The Prime Minister has responsibility to listen to Canadians, to Canada's premiers about the impact of his carbon tax and the way that it is affecting Canadians. He must allow provinces and the territories to opt out of the federal carbon tax and pursue other responsible ideas for lowering emissions without taxes. Mr. Chair, Canadians need relief, not more taxes. So that's why I'm encouraging the members of this committee to support this motion and support the struggling families by calling on the Liberal government to withdraw the 23% tax hike that took place on April 1st, just the past 10 days ago or so. Let's bring home lower prices for residents in Newfoundland and Labrador and indeed all of Canada. I think it's imperative that we do so, Mr. Speaker, that we know that we continue to get new, many of us are getting emails. I'm sure the Liberal members of the House are every day as well. And there's continuing stress upon the food prices in Canada, the carbon taxes. I mean, we've seen the impacts of Bill C-234 on the cost of increases in food by not taking the carbon tax off of the heating of barns and drying grain, Mr. Chair. The amendment that came back from Parliament needs to be put back in place to make sure that all of those are implemented, not just half of it. And we've got a situation where we need to really be heartened by the calls that we're getting from people across the country, particularly in Newfoundland, on this particular high cost of living, Mr. Chair, and I can't stress enough that the Prime Minister's own watchdog, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, has indicated that families in Newfoundland, it's going to cost them $1,300 a year now that the carbon tax has quadrupled. So I am very pleased to be able to put this motion on the floor that for a vote or for my colleagues to discuss at least, that was brought by my colleague, Ms. Stubbs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McGuire. I did not want to cut you off mid-sentence, but I have Mr. Angus. And Mr. Angus, before I have you proceeding to speak on this, or you may be proceeding also on a question that you had raised previously, and I just want to make sure that it was to invite the Minister for Subsidies, which our time had passed, but you were suggesting that we invite the Minister to come attend that committee. And I just wanted to make sure that committee members understood what was being asked for, Mr. Angus. And I didn't hear any loud objections here, but I did want to make sure that we had consent of committee to do that. To invite the Minister.
Oh, yes.
Because we had implied consent, but we did not have consent. And I think that's why Mr. Angus may have had his hand up, but did you?
No,
No,
I
you
was
did not.
speaking to
Okay.
the motion. Yes.
Okay, so you have now, go ahead, Mr. Angus, you have the floor before I proceed to other speakers.
Thank you. Yeah, I vote to adjourn.
Point of order. Point of order.
I had the floor. I vote to adjourn.
I
It's
said
not
point of
debatable.
order, though, before he said it.
No,
I
no,
said
you
point
didn't.
of order
I voted to
first.
adjourn.
I said
Sorry,
point of
you're
order
wrong.
first. I said
roll,
point
please.
of
Call the
order
vote.
first,
No,
Chair.
you didn't.
You said vote.
Yes, I did. No.
Please call the roll.
Stop.
Mr. Aldag,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Ms. Jones.
Madame Lapointe,
Oui.
Mr. Sabara.
Yes.
Can't do that
Mr.
during the
Dreesen.
vote.
My colleague had his hand up before you called the vote of order. I saw it when I was still speaking.
Mr. Falk.
No.
Mr. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Patzer.
No.
Mr.
Oh,
Simon.
pardon me, Madam, or
We-
Mr. Chair, I'm voting no against against adjourning the meeting.
Mr. McGuire, no. Mr. Simard.
Oui.
Oui. Mr. Angus.
Yes.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
Meeting adjourned.